Let me tell you a story. It was December 28th of 2020. Classic Tetris Monthly hosted its monthly events, and one of those tiers was Community Tier 3. And the final of that month was the Birbwizard versus Scoopman. And SirMaser, hosted that final. And during that final, Birb had a 66 long bar piece drought. 66 long bar piece drought, yes. And ultimately, he lost that final. And every time I or Birb are in chat or on stream, 66! But every time we are on stream, we remind each other that happened. And we didn't talk it on the podcast because I'm an idiot and didn't say anything about it. Hi, my name is Frank, also known as SirMaser. Welcome to the Dependency Podcast. Last episode of 2024. It was a great, magical year. Let's aim that forward 2025. Right now, the host of Monday nights is on the show, Birbwizard. We talked about being a host of Monday nights, how he got that job, CTWC, Jonas Cup, and much, much more. This is our conversation. Birb, welcome to the Dependency Podcast. Thanks so much for doing this.
Hey man, I'm a big fan of the show. You know that. It's an honor to be here. I'm excited. So,
hey, first question is always the same question to everyone who's new in a podcast. That is, how did you get into NES Tetris?
Oh, Frank, I thought you'd never ask. There's a bit of a story to it, as you might expect. It's kind of a roundabout way to the way most people got into it with the YouTube rabbit hole, but it starts a little bit earlier than that. I was junior year of college. It was 2019, around the time of the World Championship, and I happened to, I was getting ready for midterms, and I'm, instead of studying like a normal person, right, I was staying up late, just because I couldn't really sleep, a lot of stress, that sort of stuff, and, I just got my Nintendo Switch Online membership, and I'm like, you know what, why don't I give this 99 thing a go, Tetris 99, and I got pretty good over the coming weeks, right? I got pretty good. I got a bunch of second place finishes, and I was just getting frustrated. I had been looking back at my old footage and everything, because the Switch has that feature where you can do the last 30 seconds or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what in the world am I missing? Is it just the pressure? Is it some stacking thing that these people are doing that I'm not doing? What the heck am I doing wrong? Right. So I start Googling, right? How do I get better at this? And somewhere, and Frank, I wish I could remember for the life of me where I found this, but someone somewhere said, hey, you should watch the Classic Tetris World Championship. Watch guys like Jonas Neubauer, Harry Hong, watch all those guys play. You will learn a lot from watching their stacking, regardless of what version you're playing. I'm like, ooh, I got to check this out. So lo and behold, I Google it, I look it up, and the first thing I find is the 2018 finals, Jonas Neubauer and Joseph Staley. And I was just hooked, just the way, Chris Tang and James Chen brought the hype, and the way, Jonas treated Joseph, after, kind of being, the underdog coming in and beating him, right? After he won 7 times, and just the way everybody treated each other. I'm like, I have to go. This looks really cool. I got to go. It turns out the next one was the following week. So obviously that did not happen, but, I did watch it live, and, I've just been hooked ever since.
So were you stacking a classic Tetris player on Tetris 99, or were you stacking a modern player on Tetris 99?
Oh God, it was so long ago I barely remember, to be honest with you, but I want to say kind of a mix of both. I think, I don't know that I could quite figure out how to efficiently set up the T-spins and everything, but I think it was just kind of just some generic form of stacking, I guess, because I genuinely don't remember. So
2019 then. It's live on Twitch. And was it also the time you decided, okay, I want to play this game?
Yeah, it was around the same time. I think it was probably a little bit later that I started playing, probably over like the holiday break or whatever, since I actually had more time to, pick it up. I was busy with school and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I did play a bit, right? I started playing Classic. I'm like, this looks cool. I want to try, because I want to try to go next year, right? This would be really cool. And obviously the progress was slow. It was, and again, I didn't have a ton of time to play once we went back to school and everything, but then a certain global event happened, and I suddenly had a lot more free time, and I was really starting to. That was around the time I started to take it seriously.
Yeah. So were you playing on an emulator, or were you playing on original hardware?
Yeah. So very early on, yeah, definitely was playing on emulator, just because I wanted to get it. See, like, okay, am I gonna like this? Is this gonna be cool? I assumed I would, but I just like, well, I don't want to make the investment, right? And then end up falling out of it after like a few weeks or whatever. So
yeah. So what time did you get the original hardware or like hardware?
Yeah, so that was around April of 2020. Was when I decided, okay, I want to do this seriously. I had messaged so my aunt who lived around the block from me at the time we had a family console in our family since like launch, right? My mom, like my aunts would play like Contra, a lot of the old stuff. My mom once actually yanked a control out of my hand as I was playing Contra, like, no, you're doing this all wrong. So they were kind of gamers too, right? But my Aunt Jenny, I had asked her, I'm like, hey, you still have the console, right? Would it be cool if I borrowed this for a bit? Because I'm trying to get into NES Tetris and everything. I was telling her all about it. She's like, oh, that sounds cool. Yeah, And she's like, I actually have Tetris as well, right? And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. No money needed to be spent. Turns out it was Tengen Tetris.
No.
Which is kind of a neat, but I did have to go buy NES Tetris. It was like $7.
Who is playing Tengen's Tetris anyway?
Right.
Oh my! So that's that's like March, April 2024, and 2020 when the whole world shut down. So what kind of playstyle were you playing?
Well, I was definitely, you mean like in terms of like literally the playstyle? Because I was definitely playing DAS at the time. I tried a little bit of like hyper tabbing just to see if I could even match the speed. I definitely could not, still cannot. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to just try my hands to get maybe like I could at best get like 12 hertz is what I noticed. And I'm like, but that's if I'm like really on it. And it's so inconsistent anyway. I'm like, I'm just going to do DAS. It's easier.
So when did you switch to rolling then?
That was much later. So it was around 2021. I was pretty close to getting the max out with DAS at this point. And I saw had already seen people like Huff, were doing it. I saw it live in person and I was blown away, right? It was just crazy how much more you could get away with. I'm like, and I knew like, okay, once I get this stupid DAS max out, I'm one off at this point, right? Once I get this, I definitely want to give this like a legitimate try. And so it was like pretty much as soon as I got that max out, I went for back-to-back. Did not get it. And then I'm like, okay, let's pick up rolling like for real. Because I'd been kind of playing around with it a little bit, like throughout, I want to say it was like September, October of 21 that I at least started fiddling with it a little bit, playing with different grips. But not really doing it seriously, like.
So going back to that, what was the journey towards the DAS max out? Like, how much did you struggle going from 18 speed to 19 speed?
Very much. It took I remember the first time I played 19, I always tell people it felt impossible, which I think is the common experience.
Yeah.
But I just, even in like my very first competitive match, I want to say it was June of 2020, right? Like I was warming up on 19. I'm like, well, I'm eventually going to have to be able to play this. And it's going to make, this 15 speed that I'm playing on now feel like, mind-numbingly slow. But, and it helped. It did help a little bit. I didn't win the match, but it was just something I was practicing. Even if I was maybe getting like a couple lines, I'm like, well, I at least want to get used to that sort of rhythm, and at least, give myself a chance. Like,
is that how 29 feels nowadays with rolling?
With rolling, yeah. Again, similar story. It felt impossible the very first time, even with rolling. But yeah, it doesn't. Honestly, for me, it doesn't necessarily feel like Das 19. Like it's definitely a valid comparison, but for me, it's just different. Like because I feel
Yeah.
like you have to play a lot safer even than with Das 19. Because with Das 19, I can at least hit some like quick taps, and get stuff over to the left. But even with rolling, those sorts of moves are hard to get. I don't know. I feel like Das 19 is easier.
Really?
I think so. I mean,
Okay.
maybe it's just more experience, but I felt like I had an easier time with it once I got used to it, right? As I got better
Yeah.
later on.
Yeah. So where did you start rolling live for the first time then?
Oh, like live, like in person, you mean, or like in
Yeah, like in
competition?
person.
In person, I want to. Oh man, what event would that have been? I want to say the first event I would have done that live. It would have been the Illinois regional. I think it was 2022. I think that was the first year they did it. I want to say. Actually, yeah, no, it was the first year they did it. I remember we were in like the basement of the Illinois Union and all that. Like, dude, there was a bowling alley in front of where we were playing, like literally in the same building as where we were playing. I never in a million years thought I was right. So I'm at my first event with rolling, and I have to drown out the sound of bowling pins being, being hit. And, there was some dance game tournaments going on. So a pretty distracting environment for my first live rolling event. But that was where I first did it. I couldn't remember if it was that or the Midwest Gaming Classic, but it was definitely that one. Yep.
Oh man, yeah. Cause I always feel like when you got rolling a little bit under control, and when you played in live events, you always came up short, like real close, or you failed miserably. But it's like online it went well, but once you went to the live event, like it sounded like, or saw that you maybe forgot how to play rolling. You know what I mean?
It did kind of feel that way sometimes. And I think at least at that particular event early on, like it definitely just I was still kind of, figuring it out. I still maybe had like I want to say it was maybe like a 1.1 million at the time. So it wasn't, so I was still like I felt like I was still in the early phases, was still kind of getting my footing with it. So I think that was part of it for me. And also just I was still kind of learning, the live tournament experience. It's a long day, and it's, having to go match after match after match, like back to back to back, without really a whole lot of a break. I was still trying to learn how to manage some of that sort of stuff. Like I was starting to get hungry, getting tired, how do I manage that so I can just focus enough to, do what I know how to do?
Yeah. It's a rolling max out. Is that on the same level of yes, I finally got it compared to your first dash max out?
I mean, it still felt good. I mean, what was crazy was that it was how quickly it happened after the Das Max out. I mean, it happened like maybe a month later. And then I literally the next day after the second one, I got another, and all of them were very exciting. Like they definitely still felt like the same amount of weight as that first one early on. I mean, it took probably about like 15 or so for it to start feeling like maybe a little like, okay, cool, I got a max, right? Rather
Yeah.
than, oh my God, a max out. So
So nowadays you rarely play online. Like the last match you played online was summer 2023 Gauntlet when you participated in the teams format, and since then it's only live events. What is the reason not playing as much online nowadays?
yeah, I mean, it's just life's just been different. Obviously, the pandemic kind of, gave me a lot more time to play in online matches. Now with that not really being as large of a factor anymore, I just, not there's not as much time. My living situation has changed. Obviously I'm living on my own now, got more responsibility there, and yeah, life's just different now. So
Yeah.
and also I kind of just enjoy the live events more. As ironic as that might sound, because I did kind of struggle with some of the early live events, that I had been at, but I just enjoyed them more. I feel like it just feels like I'm hanging out with all my friends, right? And
Yeah.
just even like during matches, like bantering with like the commentators, and just whatever. It just felt like I could goof off a bit more and get away with it, So I don't know. I just enjoy it more. Like,
Is where did that change? Like, did it change when you reached the silver final in during CWC 2023?
well, it started to change earlier than that actually. So the first year that I went to Portland in 22, that literally the day I got back, I was starting the moving process to move into my new house. So like we got back, you literally like we get off the plane, my mom came to pick me and a couple of us up, and she's like, all right, here's all these updates. Like I went and changed, like was telling me all these. I'm like, give me 5 minutes, right? So, but literally that week after I got back, I moved. So that was kind of like the start of it, of me kind of playing less, online stuff, just because again, a lot more. There's just a lot more going on,
Yeah, but also I think more freedom of going towards live events now that you've been
Yeah.
living on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and having a bunch of other, like debt paid off and that sort of stuff. Yeah, it definitely is giving me a little bit more financial freedom in that sense, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's so cool just to see that you've been hanging out with all the Tetris dudes and gals outside of the competition, because we had to schedule this one, and you said, okay, I can't do on a Saturday. We're recording on a Sunday. I can't do on Saturday because dudes and guys, girls from Motor City Mayhem are coming over, and we're gonna we're gonna hang out. That's
Yeah.
so cool to hear.
Yeah, it's and that's something I'm sure we'll talk about it more later. But yeah, it's something where me and along with Jakey Wakes are really trying to build here in the Metro Detroit area, right? Like we did that regional this year, right, back in May, and there were a lot of people. We got some feedback we got. There was a lot of people that showed up that I had never heard of, right? And obviously being well versed in the community, it's like you'd think I would have heard of most people, but no, there were a
Yeah.
lot of people that came out with like, dude, we've been watching like CTVC stuff. There's finally an event close to home, and that was that was a lot of the feedback that I got. And it's like, dude, like we should all just like, start just hanging out more often, really just kind of build that sense of community. And then it just start getting bigger and bigger from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a lot of fun last night. We played some Curse Tetris. We played, a bunch of different things. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So, how was going to CTWC? You went to CTWC for the first time in 2022 as a player, mostly. I think you had hopes of going to the main bracket, gold bracket. You won your first match, top 48 against Cheese in the decider. Then the officially round 1 or round 2, or whatever you want to call it, against Naui, you got swept. Like, was it the goal of going to top 32, or was it the goal of, okay, I finally know how to play a little bit of rolling and I want to have a deep run?
Well, I mean, obviously just going to CTWC at all, like that was the dream, right? Like ever since 2019, I wanted to go, right? I wanted to go meet everybody, right? All that sort of stuff. And going into it, right? I just wanted to make the bracket, right? I just wanted to be able to play. And my thought was, I was disappointed when I did my qual. Like I had like the one max out, and I think it was just shy of a 900K kicker. It was like, I think just south of it. And I'm like, man, I didn't even think it was going to be enough to make silver bracket based on how 2021 had went, right? But turns out a lot of other people messed up their quals as well. So Saturday morning comes around. There's like the last round of qualifiers. Like Jeff was going, there's AMJ was going, having a pretty good run. A bunch of people were going that I'm like, they could get ahead of me, and I need them all to not get ahead of me because I'm at seed 48 right now. And so I'm like stressing all morning, right? Then they finally get done. I'm sitting with Sharky and Grand Design somewhere, and I look at my phone, check the bracket, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm still in. Like, that was all I wanted. I just wanted to be able to play, and just, yeah, being up there at all was an honor. It was awesome. Like,
yeah. But then the next year, 23, you didn't make the main bracket, but got to the silver bracket. After qualifying, felt that like, oh, I don't know if I want to play silver bracket. Came here to qualify for the gold bracket.
I mean, yeah, I felt mostly just frustrated with how the qual went. Like, I had a lot of really close ones, like, that could have been maxes, but it just felt like I kept throwing them away, and the one max I did get, I remember, I had to get all the way to level 31 to even get it, right? So it was just very frustrating. My mechanics just felt off. And I didn't feel like a controller issue or anything, just with me. Like, my mechanics felt off.
Yeah.
So I felt pretty frustrated about that. But I'm like, all right, well, if I'm going to silver, like, I'm just going to try to win the whole thing, I guess. Like, let's do it. Like, that was kind of my mindset.
I mean, you got to the finals.
Yeah. Yeah, Scotto was tough, man. He was really tough.
It's like, it's still something you wish you had won.
I mean, well, obviously it would have been nice if I had won it, right? Like, with how bad I wanted it and all that. But, I went in, I did the best I could. I actually played a lot better in the bracket, I feel, than I did during my qual. And I felt like I lived up to my own expectations, you know. And it went to game 5 as well, so
Yeah.
I didn't really feel too bad about losing it. You know, the last game was just such a suffer too. I had like one misdrop, like, oh god, I want to say it was like right around the transition, and I just was digging and digging and digging, right, all the way to like 27 when I finally topped out. But you know, it just I had no regrets.
Those are the worst feelings, like knowing game 5, it's the winner takes all game, and then you have to dig on 19, and you're like, you feel that win slip away slowly, and there is nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it was really frustrating. Honestly, like by the end of it, I just couldn't help but laugh. I'm like I had made an adjustment for like a J or something, and then like I had made an adjustment thinking, you know, I wanted to be a commentating, but then the bar showed up and I couldn't use it, and I'm like, I just laughed. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, like, you know, I'm like, what do you do?
CTWC RNG is brutal.
Oh, it is. It really is. That's a real thing. That's a real thing.
So 2024, you didn't participate in CTWC. What's the reason for that?
Yeah, so oh man. So even in 2023, so part of the thing was my anchor hand was starting to really bother me when I played. It happened at the Illinois Regional. It was March of that year, and I was playing in like the qualifying, right? They were doing like the Wars event, but it all counted for qualifying. That's a whole other thing. But I was playing through it, right? And all of a sudden, I just felt this sharp pain in my finger, like my tendon, right? I'm like, oh my God. And I topped out immediately. I'm like, what is that? What is going on? Right. And I actually ended up playing DAS the entire rest of that tournament. Because it hurt so much. I'm like, well, I don't want to just not play, right? I could still play DAS. That's just my thumbs, right? That's easy enough. You know, and obviously I did not fare very well doing that, but I'm like, well, better that than just conceding, right?
Yeah.
So fast forward, so I like took a pretty extended break from rolling in general, right? Just come like, I need to make sure I do not want to risk an injury. It's not worth it, right? So fast forward, you know, we're in the fall. Like it really was a lot of ups and downs. It was some days it was like, okay, I'm managing this well. I can get through an entire, you know, war session, you know, which is like 2 hours, right? Like without feeling any pain. You know, other days I can't even play a single game. It was very like it was so inconsistent. And even by the end of, you know, CTWC 23, I was starting to feel it. But after that, I'm like, okay, let me take a break, right? Just take a break for a bit. You know, like we've been playing all year long, prepping for CTWC, you know, trying to do well there. Like season's over. Let's take a break. And come to December, I tried playing a game like the first time again. It'd been like 2 months, and I had not played even a single game. And I tried to roll it. My hand hurt more than it ever had. Like trying to do it. I have no idea what happened. I'm like, you know what? That was when I kind of decided, you know, and I'd already been kind of thinking about it too. I'm like, this is not worth it. Like, I do not want to risk hurting myself. I want to make sure I have functioning hands when I'm an old man, or an even older man than I am today, you know? So I'm like, I'm just going to stop with this rolling thing. And mind you, this was before like the resurgence of DAS too, right? Like, so it wasn't, you know, so I'm like, well, do I play DAS? I'm like, I don't know. Like DAS was frustrating, you know? So anyway, to make a long story, probably longer than it needs to be, that was kind of the main reason I didn't play at, you know, TTWC this year, right? And honestly, I enjoyed doing the commentary more, right? I enjoyed doing the commentary, you know, helping run the event, you know, even some of the regionals, right? I don't know, even though it's a lot of putting out fires, I honestly it felt more relaxing than having to stress about, okay, got to be ready for the next match. Got it. Like, honestly, I find it less stressful. So
that is so insane. I mean, playing in a match without organizing is just showing up, play a match, get home,
right?
Or move on to the next match. But like organizing stuff. Well, we couldn't host the Benelux Championship this year. We really wanted to, but the few tournaments that I hosted online, that's like 2 months of putting out a fire here, answering question there. They're like, oh my God, I'm happy. I'm happy that it's over. Very happy that they organized this and I put it on the map, but like also happy that it's over. Yeah. But for you, it's like, organizing is way more relaxing than playing. That's absurd.
Yeah, I get that a lot. Yeah, I know. I just enjoy it, and particularly even like, the regional that we hosted out here this year. I just, I mostly am just like, well, I'm excited for the after party afterwards, right? Like, so if I can get us there quicker, if I can get us there quicker, like, then I'm doing a good job. That's
You hear more and more of players feeling pain when they are rolling. It's becoming a more of a serious problem in the community nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I know even people like Huff have kind of talked about that here and there too, or like Dan V. I remember at one point, yeah, no, it's definitely a big thing. And like I said, I was kind of always like, I wasn't ever quite at the elite level. Like, I mean, I played well. Don't get me wrong, I had some really good runs, but like, I definitely wasn't like, I wasn't gonna beat somebody like a Fractal or like, a Blue Scooty nowadays, right? Like, I wasn't gonna
Yeah.
beat someone like that anyway. So I'm like, this isn't worth it. Like.
So pretty much officially retired from rolling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
So then it's nice that DAS is coming back. Like when we thought 2-3 years ago that DAS was that, we had the DAS World Championship in Germany 2022, 2023. This year, 2024, multiple DAS tournaments online. And then, poof, Jonas Cup in Portland as the pretty much substitution of the World Championship that has been relocated to Pasadena, California. Right now, the American qualifier for the World Championship, that's pretty much.
Yeah, pretty
So
much. Yeah.
you could participate in that, and you did participate in the Jonas Cup. So how was that going back to Portland, but not for the World Championship?
It was a lot of fun, honestly. Like, I think I'll just start with this. I think Jonas Cup is probably my favorite event I've been to so far. Including like C2WC, like the big one, all of them. I think Jonas Cup has probably been my absolute favorite so far. I really loved they brought back a lot of like the side events, which I had never got to play in before because we were trying to do, silver bracket, right? We had a lot going on, right? So we had a whole day just for qualifying at C2WC. But this, it was like, yeah, we're gonna do the first day of just, mind meld, we're gonna do, relays. Like, that was all so much fun,
I love the relay.
Yeah. Oh,
that
yeah.
was so fun to see.
Yeah, it was fun to play it too, because I was teamed up with Reed and it was DMJ and then Redshirt, and so we're sitting there. Like, honestly, we were just trying to have fun with it. We weren't really like, we felt pretty good about our chances, but then we ran into Fractal and Rhubarb's team, and they were all. It's funny because they were like talking like a serious strategy, or like how they're gonna pass it off, or like setting up the Tetris like in an ideal spot. Meanwhile, we're just like, man, it's a shame, this guy. We're just memeing the whole time. Like, man, did you hear about that one kid that just going on a bunch of nonsense? Like,
it's still funny that they talked serious strat and then still lost to middle-aged guys.
That was pretty funny. Yeah, we got eliminated and then went to go get dinner because we were hungry, and like we saw later, like, oh my god, wait, they lost? Like, come on, like we could have done that. Like, we could,
I mean, it's proven once and for all that dance is just a middle-aged strategy. Like, if you want to play the game in your mid-30s, you got to play dance.
Right, yeah, if you're not a child, right? Like, yeah, you gotta play dance.
Oh my, I can't even imagine that my daughter is picking up NES Tetris and the first thing I'm gonna learn her is rolling, because
oh my god,
that's maybe the best thing for her to do instead of picking up dance.
You're gonna try to get the next youngest world champ out of your household, Frank? Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, she will. It's not difficult to be the best player in our household very quickly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's the same. I love how the game is getting still young players. Like, we had Zero during the Jonas Cup made his online debut against Game Scout a couple of days ago on the Friendlies show. Like, it's still so cool to see that despite the game being so old, we're still getting new young players picking up the game and probably getting even higher than we are right now. Yeah,
that kid's funny too, man. I got to talk to him at least briefly. It was, oh my god, he was so funny. Like he comes up to me, I'm talking with like Mari and I think a couple of people, and Mari goes up to him, he's like, "Hey, you know who this is?" Pointing at me. He's like, "Oh yeah, dude, I do know. Isn't that Rhubarb?" He thought I was Rhubarb. We lost it. We died laughing. I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like, no way. I'm like, man, I guess I just got that generic sort of look, right? But like, am I balding now?
I don't hope so, but I kind of see the resemblance, but no.
Yeah, but no, but all seriously, like I said, that kid's really funny. And I think he's kind of cracked. Could probably beat me too, honestly. Like,
yeah, that's insane. Like how these kids are playing NES Tetris.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Like just kind of hearing about how they picked it up too, right? Like, man, like how did this kid pick this up? It's like, oh, he's been playing since he was 4 years old. And I'm like, what? Yeah,
it's insane. So those players are ones that are playing online matches, and like you've been a staple in the online scene since September of 2020, where you started to host the Monday night edition of the Tetris Friendlies, then known as the Kingsman Tetris Friendlies. That it even had a name. It wasn't Monday Night Mayhem. It was just Monday Night
Monday Night Friendlies. Yeah, it was just,
yeah.
And
this,
go ahead. Yeah.
The story of how you got that is so funny to me, because you had one restream. You picked up your very first restream, CTM Tier 2, Balbar versus Kingsman. And 3 weeks later, you picked up your second restream, and that was the Monday Night Friendlies. Like,
yeah,
how is that possible?
I honestly don't know, but yeah, so it was funny. It was, I remember it was Labor Day of 2020. I picked up that restream. I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Like, and I knew King was kind of a big, like, kind of prolific figure in the community, right? Because the thing was, I'm gonna kind of go a little off topic for a second, but I promise I'll come back. I was kind of watching some of like the CTM, some of the online events, hearing some of the commentators like Van and Kibby Bite and Sharky, among some of the others that were there at the time. And they were all like fantastic. Like, there were a lot of really good commentators that I'd heard, right? But I'd yet to hear somebody that was like gonna bring like some crazy amount of hype, right? And I had this kind of image in my head, like what that person would look like. And then I discovered Tetris Friendlies. So I kind of knew who King was already, right? And I'm like, I'll see if he's any good as a player too, right? Like I'll stream one of his matches. Why not? I'm not doing anything. So, but no, the thing was, and I think this might be the good time to bring this up. I actually had some amount of commentary experience prior to Tetris, and I don't know that a lot of people know that. I was actually involved in a program in high school called First Robotics Competition, and after I graduated, I did commentary for that for a couple years, actually, before I got into Tetris. Like, it was a very similar style of the way you got to do the commentary for it. There's a bunch of different things going on at once, So it translated pretty well, I feel like.
Yeah. What is it exactly what you commentated?
So it was, so basically each high school, you have a chance, basically you have 6 weeks to put a robot together for the game that they reveal what it is in January, what the challenge is. And it's 3-on-3, right? So you team up with 2 other teams, right? During like qualifying matches or whatever, it was at random, right? And you get like 2.5 minutes, try to score as many points as you can based on whatever the objective is, whether it's you're shooting basketballs into a goal or, whatever it is from year to year. But it was actually like, competitive, like 3-on-3 action, so with different, robots doing different things, right? It's kind of like with Tetris, 2 players doing completely different things at any given time, right? So it transferred, right? It really transferred pretty well.
Well, I'm not imagining that you're screaming and yelling when you give commentary during the robot challenges.
It got hype for sure. Maybe at like some of the like close finishes at the end, it was definitely similar to how I do things now. Maybe not screaming like King was back then, right? But
I feel like
some energy,
I feel like you will be great at commentating at robot fights, like you see Robot Wars and something like that.
Yeah. They always ask me like, is this like BattleBots? And I'd always have to tell them, no, it's not like BattleBots.
That was like you said, I did something with robots. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's something like BattleBots. But oh
Yeah.
no, it's nothing like BattleBots.
Yeah, I get that all the time. Yeah, so I understand.
So it really wasn't your first time commentating a match or a competition or something like that. But did you change your style from the robot challenges towards Tetris a little bit?
Obviously a little bit. Some things were gonna change, right? Because obviously things are different, right? Like, the way the scoring is different. Like, I'm not having to cram as much information in 2.5 minutes, right? Sometimes it's shorter than that. If you're watching a Marts match, sorry, Marts, but but sometimes they go for 30, 40 minutes, right? Like, so you have a lot of time to really get into like the backstories. So I kind of try to bring a lot more of that in, right, with Tetris more than I could with robotics, when you get 2.5 minutes to, you have to explain not only what is going on, but try to give snippets of the context. But I'm really able to do more deep dives as a Tetris commentator for sure.
So you did a restream with King. I wasn't there with the restream, but did you change the style a little bit towards the enthusiasm that Kings brings towards the restream, or did you brought it more towards yourself?
There obviously was some inspiration from King, but definitely more towards kind of my own thing. Like, I kind of, was kind of more of a baseline, something. Again, I kind of already had my own baseline too. I kind of smashed them together for a bit, until I kind of really started to get into a rhythm and started doing it more, and kind of found my own way, right?
Yeah.
Obviously I had other inspirations as well, right? From, watching sports and all that sort of stuff, but yeah, it was just kind of, it was kind of my own thing that I just kind of, again, as I sort of figured it out, right, with Tetris specifically, it started to develop.
Is it something that you also pick up from the Major League Detroit sport teams,
Absolutely,
for those broadcasters?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a couple in particular. One for the Pistons, who unfortunately are terrible right now. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm a Pistons fan. But George Blaha is their TV broadcast commentator, right? Has been for longer than I've been alive. He's got to be getting close to retirement, but he really brings that sort of hometown sort of vibe, right? He's got his own catchphrases, which I've never even attempted to try and use in Tetris, but he's just the sort of vibe that people like him bring. And also Dan Miller, who still does the radio broadcast for the Detroit Lions, who are conversely having an amazing season right now. Just whooped the Bears, but literally today. But he, again, kind of a similar thing. He's just kind of, it's just that sort of energy that those two bring. I try to bring a little bit of that into what I do as well.
Yeah.
And then one other guy, sorry, I hate to cut you off, but one other guy, somebody, when you go to the Pistons games, the PA announcer, John Mason, that's kind of what was my main inspiration for the hype, actually. Obviously I had some inspiration from people like King too, but John Mason, if you ever look up the 2004 NBA Finals, introductions for the Pistons, this dude was still new at the time and was just bringing out everything, had all these crazy, sort of intros for all the players, for the starting lineup, all that sort of stuff. That was kind of my main inspiration for the hype anyway.
I feel like it's always those PAs are always much hyper when basketball is playing in arena compared to hockey or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, they are. Yeah.
I feel like if you go to a Red Wings game and a day later go to a Piston game, I don't know if they play in the same arena. I think they do.
They do nowadays. Yeah. They didn't used to, but they do nowadays. They have for the last probably oh god, I want to say 7 years now.
I think since Little Caesars Arena is there.
Yeah, I think that was about 7 years ago.
So, but I always feel like, okay, if you go to them back to back, or maybe on the same day, if they play on the same day, the PA is way better during basketball. And when I watch hockey, when I follow the Penguins, and on the road games, I feel like it's always the road of the home teams when the Pens are playing on the road. They bring so much more energy and joy, and also the home crowd is much more into it. And then when I see the Penguins playing at home, it's that. It's like, oh my god, we have 3 of the best players on the team, and you're silenced.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, it's almost like, oh yeah, it's another day at the office, right? If they're if they're that good.
I mean,
I haven't kept up with hockey in a while, so I don't know how good they are now. But
the Pens started bad. Have now over the last 10 games the best records in the NHL. Like went 7-1-2, but still like bottom 4 in the division. So
Right.
it's still. Crosby scored his first goal in a month. So that's saying something.
Wait, Crosby's still on the Penguins after all these
Yeah.
friggin' years? Oh my
Yeah,
god.
yeah.
Oh my, I remember he was playing when I was a kid, man. What the heck? Oh
Signed
my
a
God.
2-year
I
extension.
remember him whooping us once, right? The finals, right? And then us doing the same to him. So I was
Yeah. Oh my. I know what I'm talking, but I watched the what was it? Stanley Cup 07-08 finals, and then 08-09. Oh, those game 7 were intense during the finals.
They were crazy. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, it was like the talk of the town when I got to school the next day,
Yeah. I can imagine. It's still awesome to see them back to back in finals. Like the intensity, you felt it. Especially,
it was a good rivalry. Like that's really what it was,
And now both suck.
Yeah, now they're both bad. So yeah.
So going back to Tetris, I mean, we can talk sports a lot, but we'll go back to Tetris. Like, so you did a recently with King. What was the conversation like that you? Because King did 2 shows a week, one on Monday, one on Friday. The Monday was open queue, the Friday was pre-booked. That was also back then in 2020. So what was the conversation with King like? He was like, okay, I want you to host the Monday nights and I'll do Friday nights.
I mean, it was a very brief conversation, actually. So I remember the day pretty vividly, actually. I was out on a bike ride or whatever, and I feel my phone go off, and eventually, I stopped to take a break or whatever, and I pull out my phone, I'm like, yeah, who's texting me right now, right? And I see it's from King. I'm like, the hell's King doing in my DMs, right? Like, what's going on, right? He was very much like, hey, I really liked that restream that you did last month. How would you like to do this every week on Mondays? And I'm like, sure. Yeah, that sounds great. Like, that was pretty much the conversation. He's like, all right, great. Sounds good. See you next Monday, right?
It's so fun that you still do it after 4 years.
Yeah.
Still going strong.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. I like doing it. That's pretty much, I mean, why else would I do it? I just like doing it.
I mean, we already had 3 or 4 Euro-friendly hosts in that time span.
Yeah. And Sonny just got done doing it for indefinitely,
And Birb and King are going strong every single week.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It's fun, yeah.
So, what is your involvement in Friendly storyline or putting together matches for the super shows or putting together or organizing the mini tournaments for the various number 1 contenderships? What's your involvement in that and how much say do you have in that?
I mean, it's pretty minimal. I mean, like it kind of writes itself, honestly. Like I'm sure King told you that as well, right? It writes itself. A lot of these different storylines and things, So like as you kind of get players that are kind of in similar divisions, right? Like the upstarts, the fedoms, not so much with the heavyweights. The heavyweights is just kind of, hey, here is strong player. Go fight the current champ, right? Like here is an elite level player. But as far as like the fedoms and the upstarts, right? It's it basically writes itself. Like a lot of the players really are very involved in it, and they bring a lot of passion. It's why I always love the upstarts division, right? Especially when, you had like Maestro and 20 Dan and Ian Keith trading the belt, like, like a joint, right? Like just passing that around, like it's just they really kind of set the standard, I feel like, just for, the passion, right? Where all the promos and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, and so when you get to like the tournaments and all that sort of stuff, we're just like, okay, this just makes perfect sense. Let's do these 3 triple threat matches, for instance, right? And then the 3 winners will duke it out for the title, right? Like it just writes itself, honestly. So I don't really have to do much at all, other than agree to take him on the show, that's about it.
So King is basically planning the shows and the storylines as far as it can be, and he's sending you a DM like, okay, these 3 are playing on your show, these 3 are playing on my show, this is storyline, yada 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 yada, go for it.
In essence, yeah. I mean, and honestly, I watch his show, right? He watches my show, right? So I'm able to kind of keep up with like what's going on. I mean, usually I watch it in the VOD, but I at least will watch it back afterwards. Like, okay, what happened in this like big like these guys are kind of big upsets. Like, what happened here? Or like, what happened in these other matches? Just to kind
Yeah.
of so I'm at least caught up. And I can kind of go off that like, oh yeah, this past Friday, right? Like this happened. So so there's definitely like the research aspect of it. But yeah, I mean, I kind of, generally know what's going on, in general. So
But sometimes these shows are like 5-6 hours long.
yeah. Yeah, that's why it's usually on the VOD kind of like throughout the week or whatever, right? Like I just, so I'll have it on in like the background, sometimes even live, right? That's why I'm not super chatty on, the Friday show because I usually will be like I'll be like cooking dinner, right? I'm like, oh, we put on Friday Night Fights, like, that sort of thing. So yeah, like I at least try to keep up, to some degree, at least enough. Yeah.
And it's so cool to see, like, we talked, those characters during Friendlies, like, they're normal players in the Tetris community, but once they step into the friendly universe, like, they become the characters. Like, we talked about 20 Dano 3, Ian Keith, Maestro. That rivalry was insane. And the only way you could see it or feel it was on Friendlies, like on the regular shows or the super show. And outside of Friendlies, they were just 2023 Maestro, Ian Keith. They were just the players in the community. Yeah. But here they were like, oh my god, they were fighting for that upstart belt, and it's like
they were stars,
it was really pretty much the main event. Like, I didn't care about the Friendlies championship because, okay, two rollers playing against each other, but what's the history? Why are they fighting? But like those upstart players, they were fighting because we know the story.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I loved about it, right? I still love about it. That's just, it's what it's about. Like people, this the passion they bring. It's like, at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of exhibition matches. But the fact that they take it seriously, helps us take it seriously, right? Like it's,
Yeah, but I mean, if we're gonna look at if they're just exhibition matches, yeah, for 80% maybe there is. Like, I like to play on Friendlies because I just want to play a match once in a while right now. So what do? Okay, I'll pick a match on Friendlies because it's no hassle just finding my opponent, play for 10 minutes, and then I'll go out. but like for those top 20%, like the ones that playing each and every week, they just make the show what it is. We'll be back with the conversation in a minute. But first, join the Classic Tetris Monthly Discord server. The Discord server is the main hub in Classic Tetris, and you can qualify for the monthly tournaments ranging from Masters event to the community tiers. Go to our link tree to join the Discord. Subscribe to the Dependency Podcast YouTube channel. The first 32 episodes of PDP are available at full length, and new original content will be released in the next coming month. Follow Dependency Podcast on the socials. Hit the link tree to follow us. Do you have a suggestion who you want to see next on the show? Let me know on the socials, or join our PDP Discord at bit.ly/PDP Discord and tell me there. Now, let's go back to the conversation.
Yeah, like you said, right? It's characters, right? Like they kind of, even the ones that aren't necessarily like contending for like titles or anything. Like, Marts is a perfect example of this, right? Like someone who has played over 400 Friendlies matches over the last few years, had like a 3-year streak of never missing a single episode. I mean, this dude, Frank, this is a guy that literally had a medical condition and was in the hospital, left the hospital to come play on my show, and then was like stoned out of his mind on whatever medication they had him on, and then proceeded to go back. Like, so like that sort of character is like a big part of it too. Marts in particular, he's a huge part of it. But and that goes for everybody that plays, right? Like week in, week out, like our regulars pretty much, right? Mainstays as I generally call them. They kind of slowly build the character as the weeks go on. It's fun. It's really fun.
Oh man, yeah, that's Mud's story will never get old. Like how
I know, man.
every normal player who would have just, all right, I'm in the hospital for a medical procedure. I'll stay at the hospital, but Marts is like, nah, let's go home, let's play
Yeah, right.
Tetris.
I would love to have been in the room for that conversation with the medical staff that night. Like, oh, I would have loved to have been in the room to hear him try to explain himself on that one.
But also his wife, like explained to his wife, I should go home. Like, they're a big Tetris family. Don't get me wrong, but like, you're in the hospital for a reason. So,
Yeah.
like, what did he do to convince to his wife, but also the doctor?
Judy, right? Yeah.
Going home and play Tetris.
He's a lucky man. That's what I'm gonna say on that. He's a lucky man.
but also, I love how when the announcement is made that the Monday show, the Friday show is there, the first match always usual March match because we know he'll find an opponent.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'll be like, all right, I'm starting booking, right? And literally I'll start like the list or whatever. It's always Marts. I try to think of some funny way to put it every time. It's like Marts versus, some jabroni I think King had put once, or I put like Marts versus some guy off the street. Like, cause I'm sure if some guy on the street like that had never played before would agree to play him on Friendlies, he'd take him up on it. Absolutely.
Oh my. Marts just played his 2000s NTSC match.
Yeah. I think it was on my show too, I think.
It's insane. I mean, I've restreamed maybe like 600-700 matches, but that is like, okay, I can do 8 on a day, but like playing 2000 matches in like a 4-year span or something like that, I just like,
yeah, it's insane.
It's insane. Oh. How do you feel that your commentary style has changed now over the past four years, doing regular weekly shows, commentating with King on the super shows? How do you feel that it's changed right now? Do you think it's more hype based, or do you think you're a little bit more quieter now?
I mean, I feel like I've always been fairly balanced with it, to be honest. And I feel like that part of it, like at least my core, that what I'm trying to do with it, is definitely remained the same. But there've definitely been some smaller things like here and there that I've definitely shifted over the years. I've certainly gotten better equipment for it, right? Because I mean, Van made fun of me forever for having an AM radio mic, pretty much. But there's just kind of some small, like I've kind of gotten more comfortable, right, and I've gotten more into a rhythm, and figured out like, okay, this is the kind of stuff I should focus on. Like as we get closer to like the end of the game, right? Like kind of really like, okay, let me actually focus. I think the biggest thing that's changed since I like very first started was I got more comfortable just like interacting with chat while doing the commentary like on the Monday show. Yeah. And that's kind of become, I think that's the biggest thing that has changed. I kind of treat like the Mayhem episodes, I kind of treat it as a chance to hang out with the community, right? It's kind of my chance to catch up, like, hey, what's been going on, guys, right? Like, and we just, like, I swear at least once a month there's like some debate about, the pizza chain tier lists, like that sort of thing. So like we'll talk about random nonsense, right, throughout most of the 18, and then like, oh yeah, score check, we're on 19, then give the score check, So I've kind of almost become a little bit more nonsensical, I guess, but it's just. But I've just kind of created it as more of a community thing. Obviously I don't do that as much when we're like at live events or whatever, right? But at least for Friendlies, that's like kind of my thing now,
Yeah. But has it changed since you've gone from your own channel towards the Classic Tetris channel? Or do you feel like that has been more, I've been more involved now with the community?
I mean, certainly a little bit. I mean, more in the sense, I've definitely, been like, I tried to like explain things more, like when we were on my channel, like it was mostly just people that are in the community that understand what's going on, understand the Friendlies universe, right, all that, are keeping up with it. But with Classic Tetris, there's people that have never seen this before, right, or just, hey, I'm a fan of CTWC, like what's this event, right, what's going on, right? So I definitely try to like explain things a bit more. It's like, now remember, this is for the like, for instance, there was a triple threat match we did this past episode, right, and it was for who's going to move on to the Upstarts Championship. So I really tried to make sure, like, yeah, again, this is for the Upstarts Championship, whoever wins this, right, like kind of explaining that a bit more than I probably would have on my channel.
Yeah.
What trying to be more oh god, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, basically just more informative, I guess, is the word I'm looking for.
Were you excited moving towards Classic Tetris channel?
I honestly, at first, I had mixed feelings about it. I knew overall it would probably be a good thing, but I kind of had mixed feelings. Just what I was afraid might happen, to be honest, was that it would lose its charm. Like the show would kind of lose its charm. It'd be a bit too like sponsory or what or the word I think a lot of people use would be corporate. I was kind
Yeah.
of worried it might become like hey, we got to kind of conform to like certain standards or whatever, but. And even though, again, some things have changed, I think it definitely has still held the charm. I kind of realized, like, like what really makes it is like the people that play it and the people that show up, right? So I kind of, and yeah, I talked with King about it too, and he was like, and that was pretty much what he told me. He's like, look, it's about the people. Like, certainly, and if you
Yeah.
decide like you don't want to do it, like that, like that's not a big deal. Like I understand your decision, but like, it's really the people, that make it what it is.
Yeah. But
So.
is it sometimes difficult to implement being a little bit more corporate instead of being on your own channel just and doing whatever you want?
I mean, I guess. I mean, it's like I said, it basically, when I was doing it for the first few times, like on the CTWC channel, I kind of was kind of being a little bit more careful to not like, say something completely stupid. But as people, kind of started watching, some new people started showing up and I started to get to know some of the new people watching, right? And it just I'm like, I don't think they really care that much. Like I'm gonna just do what I was doing, right? Like, obviously keeping it PG and all of that. But
Yeah.
but other than that, right? Like, I just kind of do my thing. People seem to actually like it. So, I should just keep doing it. You know?
It's typical that people from outside of the community they pretty much only watch the Classic Tetris World Championship or CTM Masters on YouTube whenever the video gets uploaded, and rarely watched it live on Twitch. But now the trend this year is pretty much that every major live event has been restreamed on multiple platforms. The World Championship has been restreamed on multiple platforms. The Monday and Friday nights have been restreamed on multiple platforms. Do you see a different audience on the YouTube side compared to the Twitch side?
Yeah. Well, for one, there's certainly a bit quieter. Like, there's not as many of them that watch on YouTube, at least on the Friendlies show, right? At least the one that I do. I can't speak for like some of the regionals or anything. I know the regionals they probably get more people, right, and all of that sort of stuff. But at least on the Friendlies, they're certainly a bit quieter. But like the people that do show up are like consistently showing up like every single week, and that's kind of the big thing I've noticed. Like I see a lot of like the same names, like, oh hey, how's it going, right? Like glad you're here, right?
Yeah.
But it definitely has widened the audience just in general. I think for Classic Tetris as a whole, I mean, being able to stream on YouTube, like Twitch removing that exclusivity clause or whatever they had that, prevented us from doing that, like that honestly has been, I feel like in general has been huge.
Yeah. When I did the NCC Cup in November, it was really weird to know that you're live on Twitch, but also on YouTube, and that you could see and watch back like the VODs and like what people said. And it's like, even though I had the restream chat, it's still unreal that you saw a message from Facebook and then saw a message from Twitch and then you saw a message on YouTube and that you were like, oh damn, I'm really am live. Pretty much on
Yeah.
all social platforms on the internet.
Yeah, honestly, a little overwhelming sometimes. Like, like for some of like the bigger events, I'm like, oh my God, I can't even keep up with all of this, and
Yeah.
and not, and oh my God, it's hard for me to like try and scroll back up, like, oh my God, what did I miss? Right? Like it's just, yeah, it can be a little overwhelming at times.
So, how is it working with classic Tetris? Is it something when you do something wrong? Is it then that Vince is coming and saying for, oh, look at that, or maybe watch out for this?
Honestly, it's been very easy. I basically haven't heard like any of that whatsoever. I mean, sometimes like, when the biggest thing has honestly been like, not using copyright music. Like with Twitch, it's like, okay, we'll just mute that part of the audio, right? But YouTube does not play nice with that at all. So it's been a lot of like having to, readjust some of the music that we've used on our streams. We've had several different like providers, and because some have like changed their policy, or their licensing or whatever it was, right? So we've had to change our tunes up a few times, but other than that, I mean, it's been pretty chill. It's been really they've been really easy to work with. So
And was it also the foot in the door that you could commentate during the World Championships in 23 and 24?
I mean, certainly, yeah. I mean, obviously, by the time we got to around then, most people knew who I was, right? Like, oh yeah, he's the guy that does the Monday show, and that, yeah, I feel like that certainly, yeah, definitely opened that door.
So how is it to commentate on a live event? How different is it compared to commentate online?
Very different. I mean, well, the style is very similar, right? But I definitely, my style again is a little bit different. I obviously am not keeping up with like chat and everything, right? When we're at like, the world championship, right? I'm just going, right? We're just, doing analysis. I'm working with, I know I was in the booth with King at one point, Bidwell at another, right? Like kind of bouncing, so being able to bounce off like another commentator was definitely a good skill that I've learned over the years. But it honestly, I mean, I feel like when I even way back in the day when I did the robotics commentary, right? It's the similarity there was just being able to kind of feed off the crowd, like during like the big moments.
Yeah.
When everybody like lose their mind, like, oh my god, somebody reached, super kill screen, right? Level 39, right? For the first time today, everyone's losing their mind. I can really like just amplify myself and just, really feed into that,
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
But I feel like that is the case during the matches. But like you did a qualifying block with Tugi, I believe, on a Saturday morning. The late qualifiers, I think the it's empty, and the only ones that are there are like staff and the players that are qualifying. How is that commentating? Because I don't know if you have chat on screen with you when you do commentary, or you just have to focus on the gameplay.
Well, it depends on the setup, and I actually my commentary with Tugi, I think, was actually during the bracket. I think it was during bracket, but certainly, yeah, I think on CT2, I think we did have like the chat nearby, so we get we got to glance at it here and there. I know on one though, at least earlier on, we kind of what we had in front of us actually was, we had like the camera facing us and everything. We had like stats in front of us that like Marfram would be, putting in like, hey, if you could work this in, right? Like, maybe try to work this in a little bit if you can. So it was kind of cool getting some of those sorts of tidbits. So I guess we were still being fed information, but it was just different information, right? Than it would be at, like say like online or whatever. You kind of have to just pull it, off the top of your head, right? Or out of your ear,
Yeah,
right? Whichever
yeah.
whichever end, you know.
So, what do you prefer? Commentating online or commentating in a live audience?
Oh man, that's honestly tough because like I enjoy it all a lot. There's definitely different challenges that come with both. I think the big thing with like live events too that I've learned is I need to have some earplugs in because it can get really loud, especially when I was commentating with Tugi, for instance. I was put right next to a speaker when I could hear
Oh,
Sharky popping off, which again he sounded great. Don't get me wrong, like that's not a knock on Sharky. He sounded amazing, but it was right next to my ear, and it was really hard for me to hear even what Tugi was saying, who was sitting right next to me. So earplugs were a big investment. But but of course with online, you kind of have to rely on the chat to really, get like the crowd reaction, right? Like, with live events, like everything's instantaneous, right? Like there's not any of the delay or anything like that. So I don't
yeah.
know. I think they're just both like really fun in just their own ways. They just both bring different challenges.
And is there a difference in commentating in during the World Championship compared to commentating to the smaller local events?
I mean, it's pretty consistent. I mean, with local events, it's obviously a lot more, it's a lot more lax in like how it's done and like who's doing it, right? Like pretty much at a local event, pretty much anybody can just jump in, right? And I try to let people do that too. And so I'm not, because doing it all day can get pretty tiring, as you
Yeah.
might expect. So especially when some of the events go late, behind schedule, all that sort of stuff. Like, yeah, I need to really pace myself. It's very similar to like when you're in competition in person, right? You really got to pace yourself. So so like at CTWC, it's very much like, okay, you are going to be here for this block, like these few matches, like you kind of know ahead of time, right? Like this is where you're going to be. So I think that's kind of the main difference. Whereas with regionals, it's just kind of, hey, who's here? Who wants to do this, right?
Yeah.
you know.
So along with JQ Wings, you're the main organizer in the Metro Detroit area. How did that start?
So that actually started a few years ago. Like I've been I'm like for the longest time, the closest event to me was in Columbus, Ohio, right? The Ohio Regional, which is now a pretty big event every year, right? Hosting like about 50 people, right? But so certainly a good one to go to. But I'm like, it'd be nice if there was one like close by, right? That I could just go to the event and then go sleep in my own bed afterwards. Like that'd be kind of nice, right?
Yeah.
So, like it was around the time Jakey and I met actually. He was doing a melee event and they were just like, hey, like you should come out, right? You should come out, come see what it's about, it'd be nice to meet you after all this time, right? And we met, we were talking about, I'm like, man, this would be cool to get Tetris as part of this, right? So we kind of started trying to work that in. And then the venue that they were hosting these melee events at, the pipe burst the night before we were supposed to host the first tournament there.
Oh, no.
Like Huff was gonna come out, I think NGC was gonna come out, but some people were gonna come out, and I'm like, I get a message that morning, and Jakey messaged me, hey, so funny story.
No.
And I'm like, oh boy, right? Like, so we had to cancel that, of course. And Milo had actually driven in from Milwaukee. He was like, yeah, I just want to come for the hang. And I'm like, I have some bad news for you.
Oh.
Well, the three of us ended up just, hanging out at Jakey's house. We did a stream, it was fun, but it was like, man, like that was kind of a bummer, right? Like we wanted to do this event. We were finally going to do it. And then, pipe burst. That was, I think, around the time I started rolling, actually, I think it was like 2022.
Yeah.
But then, we're like, okay, let's see if we can find a new venue. And we looked like forever, man, right? Like it's like over a year. We were like, man, where on earth, right? Like, are we going to find somewhere to do this, right? Like,
I
who
feel
would actually
yeah.
take us? There were a few potential spots, right? We kind of wanted it to be kind of like its own thing, right? Because the thing about Measure Detroit, there's not really a lot of conventions, like big ones that would probably host us, right? Well, there was
Yeah.
there was Big House, like a big melee tournament that had been wanting to host us for years. Well, they're not doing that anymore, so Big House is no longer a thing. So that fell through, right? But but then just a lot of other venues were falling through, and eventually, for the tournament we did this year, right? It took forever. We found this place. I was looking for somewhere. I was looking to get back into Magic the Gathering. I hadn't played that in a few years, and I was looking for somewhere to play that. Not since I had moved and everything, right? I'm like, well, where are the good spots around here? And I stumbled upon this place, called Gatekeeper Games, which is where we ended up hosting the event because I saw that on their website it had, you can rent this space, and I'm like, interesting, right? And I reached out to the guy, and he was just so chill about the whole thing, right? I was like, yeah, this is what I'm wanting to do. He's like, yeah, like how many people are you expecting, right? Asked me some of the basic stuff, He's just like, yeah, that works. Let's do it. It's like the most chill thing ever.
Oh.
So that was kind of how that all came to be, right? And there were some other smaller events we kind of did, like house events and like one at one of the local colleges last year we did, University of Michigan. It's just as kind of like their own thing, right? So there was other stuff that we did, but it was really kind of this slow burn. There was a lot of interest, right, for people in the area. It just, it was just so hard to find a place.
I know. We had the same thing. We wanted to host the Lowlands Championship, like our first live event, and we had a date planned and all. And I was looking for a venue, got a venue in like pretty much the middle of our region. Like we had to the old Netherlands and the Flanders regions in Belgium, so I had to take everything in common. We had a place in Utrecht, like pretty much that center of our region, and they canceled on us. Like after 2 weeks of confirmation, I could not find
No
a
way.
different. Yeah, I had it booked in like June, end of June, early July, and they canceled on us 2 weeks later. You know why? Because I wasn't a resident from from Utrecht,
Oh my
so
God.
they only rented it out to people from Utrecht, and we don't have anyone living there. So it was
You
a
gotta be
beautiful
kidding me.
location and all 50 minutes from Central Station. So like, that was the perfect place, and I could not find anything. Or
Yeah.
it was like 2,500 euros for a full day. That's not the money that I want to pay.
Right.
So I had to cancel like a month prior, and we're like, oh my God.
God.
But the reason I bring it up is like, I had people that reaching out to me because they knew that I was organizing it along with two others. And I was like, oh, so many people are interested that I don't know who they are. but they play NES Tetris or saw NES Tetris and they wanted to come, and it was like, fudge. And the
Yeah, you're
funny
like,
thing
how am I
is,
gonna break it to him? Like,
yeah, yeah, but also the funny thing is, um, Morlando was in the Netherlands during that time period. I believe Draco was in the Netherlands during that time period.
yeah,
And they all wanted to come. So we had the most
yeah,
random international meetup,
right,
potentially. But, and it all fell through, and I felt so bad. And
yeah,
it's like, oh, the worst feeling in the world, pretty much.
yeah. No, it's
But
gotta
it's
be, man. Yeah,
It is, but it's like how it's so funny to see that so many people are interested in NES Tetris that are not in the community. So that you're like, where all are all those people? Like, how do I not know you?
yeah. Yeah, I mean that was honestly like a big goal of our event too, right? Like obviously we've always wanted to do a regional, right? Like we at least once I wanted to do it, but that was
Yeah,
kind of a big goal, right? Again, just kind of like I was talking about earlier, right? Like, really building that community around here, and just kind of getting more people involved, and making it kind of a more regular thing, just even if we do like some other events like outside of that regional, right? Like, just do other things with it,
yeah.
have fun, get to know people.
So how hard was it to put it all together once you had the venue?
Oh, well, once we had the venue, I mean, again, we had done some other stuff before. The big thing was just making sure we had the equipment set, and I got a lot of help in that regard for sure. Chris Bidwell came in super freaking clutch, man. My God, he, having all like the dad cams as he calls them, right? His all like a lot of that equipment, like he came through for sure. I think that was kind of a big hurdle, like, getting some of the graphics. I graphic design is definitely not my passion. I am not very good. I left a lot of that to Jakey Wicks. I'm like, hey, you want to do all the graphics and stuff for this tournament? By all means, please, because otherwise I'm paying someone else to do it. Like,
Yeah,
because I am not going to do this. I am terrible, right, artistically. So it's just a lot of like, honestly, just getting all like the loose ends tied up. Making sure I had what I needed. Vince was very helpful too. Like he had sent me home from Milwaukee, right? He was at the Milwaukee event. He sent me home with like boxes, right, of Retrons. So he's like, hey, you got an event coming up, right? You want to use? I'm like, honestly, sure, let's do it. Like that
yeah.
sounds great. I'll take them. Free consoles, pretty much, right? And I still have them in my basement, right? Like just for when we do the next one.
That's so
um,
cool.
yeah.
But
So
also
yeah.
trying to get all the feats. Did you use Nestor's champ during your
Oh
regional?
God, no, we did not. There was no way. I'm like, I want to just keep this simple, right? Like, let's not try to, go too crazy. Like, I'm pretty familiar with NCC naturally, right? Hosting and like, going to Illinois, right? Like, because they were kind of the first event to really adopt it, right? So that was
Yeah,
kind of my first real like exposure to it. So obviously I have some experience, but I'm like, I want to keep it simple, just to, that way less stuff can go wrong. Because the way I see it running events, something is going to go horrifically wrong, right? At least one thing. If I can do
yeah.
what I can to mitigate that, right? That's what I'm gonna do.
What was the one thing that went horrifically wrong during
Oh God.
Motor
So
City Mayhem?
yeah, so my PC. So this PC that I'm on right now is not the PC I brought to the event. I actually last year I built a second PC. It's this mini ITX build, so it's a really small, like portable sort of thing. The case that it's in even has like a handle you can like pull it up and like retract it. It's kind of adorable actually, but
Yeah,
but it's kind of supposed to be like this beast, and has done really well for me, right? At all these other events, I had never really had a problem, right? And this event I'm getting feedback when we're running the four-way scene that like the audio was getting like progressively more glitchy, right? And
no,
like, it was just the lag was like so like ahead of the video. Like it was really bad, right? And I looked at the local recording later. I mean, this thing was chugging. I had no idea what the issue was. Fast forward, and I'm like, I don't think it's the PC because like I've never had this issue before, right? And
yeah,
maybe it was like, I'm like, I don't know what the issue is, right? So then fast forward a month later, and I was so I run this dumb gaming tournament at my house every year with my friends, and we were recording that locally, right? And I was using that same PC. for the first video that we did, my PC was doing a bit too much, and it had the same issue.
Oh,
So I'm like, oh my god, my PC was the problem, right?
yeah.
So that was the big thing that went horrifically wrong. I mean, otherwise, things went pretty good. Even the schedule, like I could not believe just how well it ran. I mean, it was late at night, like it was like 10 o'clock at night that we got done. But I swear to you, Frank, it was under 30 minutes that we were packed up and out of the building. Like
Oh, wow.
it was, yeah, like so many people like stayed behind, like, hey, how can I help? Right? Like, what can I do?
Oh,
Like, what can I
that's
carry in the
so
car? Like,
great.
like Colin, C Chris TM, was a huge help in that. Bidwell stuck around, right? Like everyone stuck around pretty much, that, and because they were all coming to the party anyway. It's like, well, we can't go to the party until you guys go to the party because you're hosting, right? So like, let's help you out.
True. Yeah.
So it was crazy, but like, but that was honestly the big thing though. Like the fact that was like the biggest thing I think was just the PC struggling, like the stream. I obviously, the stream's kind of secondary, at least to me when I'm running a live event. The stream is secondary to the live in-person experience for everyone that's there. But
Yeah.
I obviously wanted that to be good too, right? Like that's kind of like our thing with Tetris. I wanted it to be good for everybody. We eventually switched to just doing 2 players on stream, and it worked fine.
Oh,
But so I
fun.
think it was just that 4-way scene, right? It was just too much happening, right? And it couldn't handle it.
But did you still continue with 2 matches at the same time, or because you had to switch to a two-way field, you only play 1 match at the same time?
More actually. So we had played a bunch like off stream, right? Like so we were kind of picking and choosing, like, okay, what is gonna be like the hype match that everyone wants to see, like that's gonna put on a good match and that, are popular, right? That people want to see, right? So like,
Yeah.
the Huffs, the Hydra dudes, right? Like a lot of those sorts of guys that were there, Cole, right? Like I knew those were the kinds of people that the people were gonna want to watch and that were gonna put on good matches, pretty much guaranteed, right? So I'm like, well, we'll put them on the stream, right? And then some of the other ones, I mean, there were some good matches that happened off stream too. So it kind of sucked, but like, at the end of the day, it's like, it's a live event. We gotta, we gotta get out of here, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so we don't really have the luxury of time.
Were you really happy that some of the top players just make it all the way up north towards the Detroit area to
Oh yeah.
play in your tournament?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was awesome, right? Just having them all there, and the fact that a lot of people still stuck around for the after party too. A lot of us still got to, we did it at Jakey Wiggs' house actually. We, about 20 minutes from the venue, like we were there like super late. So it was awesome that not only did a lot of them come and play the event, but a good portion of them stuck around and, hung out with all of us too. And it was just a really fun night.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, and some
And
people actually even travel pretty far too, like Reed in particular, right? He's a close friend of mine, right? So like I messaged him like, hey, if you want to come, like you've got a place, right? Like I got you, right? But he did not end up crashing here, but he did come, right? He did fly out, to compete in it. Ended up, oh man, you can ask him about how his run went. It was it was something, but it was kind of cursed, but. But it was just crazy. I was honestly overwhelmed with like the support that we got, for kind of our first time doing it, like as like a big thing like that, right?
yeah.
So, and again, the venue was awesome for us too, right? That's the other big thing. Like, they had like an open bar or not open bar, but they had like a bar and everything. You could get drinks. But a lot of people, I was kind of like, hey, like make sure you support the venue too because they were awesome for hosting us. Like they didn't
Yeah.
even charge me to be there.
Oh,
either. Like they didn't even charge me, like, because they did.
wow.
I think their line of thinking was, well, we don't have to shut the place down for this. They still had other stuff going on, like at other areas of the venue of the store that we were in. So it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever. Like you guys are fine. Like, don't worry about it. I'm like, oh, okay. I budgeted like $400 for this, but okay, cool.
Yeah.
know.
So you're coming back to that venue next year?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly, if not for the big regional, certainly we're gonna try to do some other events there for sure. I think we've got some tentative another event that wanted to host us for the regional this year, but we'll definitely be back at that venue, for other events.
So you got opportunity to maybe host the regional somewhere else.
Yeah. It's it's not really confirmed yet, but there was we were already kind of looking at like the March-April timeframe for the event this year. With the Illinois regional being moved to around the time ours was, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, well, we can move ours just kind of whenever, right? Like it's not like it was part of a bigger thing, but but there was a bigger like tournament that was wanting to host us too. It's like, hey, if we're interested, so we gotta talk with them a bit. Kind of see what that's all about. See if it's something we want to pursue. We're thinking tentatively, probably, but like I said, I don't want to say too much too publicly if we just not do it. So
Is it like a part of a bigger convention or something like that?
yeah, well, not so much a convention, but just like a bigger like tournament with like other tournaments going on. Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So not exactly a convention, but just a part of a larger tournament.
Yeah, exactly. So how is it to meet all the players live, like in person?
Yeah, it's honestly I mean, the very first time, I'll never forget the first event I went to in Columbus, right, in 2021. It was I remember the first player I met actually was Maestro, right? And we got, just that look that everybody gives, just like, oh wait, is that? Oh my god, hi, right? Oh, that's you. Like you're that person from online, right? Like it's always the most like surreal thing ever, and it's just
Yeah.
yeah, that was like honestly like that whole day, right? It was just one of the best days of my life, honestly. Like just all these people I've been talking to for over a year, right? You know.
I feel my first live meeting was in Antwerp, 3 hours from my city. So I was driving. I met up with my Winkers and with Jazz Steve and with Rule and with someone else. I can't remember the name. Sorry. But it's like, so I saw Jazz Steve and I was like, that was 2021. So I was like, oh, he's the only one who's been to Portland for CTDOC. That's so amazing. Like
It's
we
so
asked him,
sad.
yeah. This is like I love Jess Steve. I mean, went to Jonas Cup this year. Plays only in the NTC Cup online each and every year. So it's I love him really.
Yeah.
So, what are your plans now for the upcoming year? Like, what do you want to do Tetris wise? What do you do as a commentator? What do you want to do as an organizer?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, Motor City Mayhem, yeah, like I said, that's going to be back, regardless of whether we do it with that other event or not. Like that, the event, we're going to do it again. Absolutely. We had such a blast. That's definitely something, we want to do more regularly, right? Hosting a lot of like the local events, for the people that are like around here, right? Or if people want to travel, like, sure, we'd be happy to have you for some local stuff. But like, we would tell people like, hey, it's a local thing. Don't feel like you have to, right? But, so that's kind of our big thing is like an organizer for sure. Obviously going to be sticking with the friendlies, I think, for the foreseeable future, right? Until I stop enjoying it, right? Which I don't see happening anytime soon. I'm definitely going to keep doing that.
Yeah.
But as far as the player though, probably not a lot. Like, I still probably play in some like DAS tournaments and such, right? But ultimately though, I think I just want to try and go to events that I haven't been to before, right? Because we're pretty spoiled here in the Midwest. I say it all the time, right? But we're pretty spoiled here in the Midwest. We got Columbus, we got Milwaukee, we got, Illinois, which is going to be in Chicago this year. So probably easier for people to get to. And now, the Detroit event, right? So it's like maybe, travel a little away from home for, a couple events here and there, right? Certainly it would be nice to, I know Genesis is one I was looking at. I might end up going to that one in a couple months here. So yeah, definitely want to, I want to experience more of the Tetris.
So, last question before I'll let you go. We come off of a crazy year in NES Tetris. It started in December 21st, 2023, when Beluscudi crashed the game of NES Tetris, and it basically ends now with a 60 million world record before CTWC, rebirth after CTWC, like the biggest year of NES Tetris, like the biggest world championship we ever had in NES Tetris. Prize pools from various major online competitions are getting bigger and better than ever. Is it something we can
And
top
with that
in
all being said,
2025,
this
you
is
think,
the end
or
of
is
the
it something
Dependency Podcast. Thanks so
we
much for
can,
watching. Follow us
hold
on the
that
socials.
momentum
Hit our link
in
tree.
2025? How do
Happy
you see that?
holidays, and I'll see you all in
I think so.
2025
I mean,
in January.
I
Bye.
think to quote Vince, right? It's one of those things where, we try to do better we make it hard for us to outdo ourselves every year, but then somehow still do it. And I feel like this is a conversation as a community we have all the time. We're like, man, like we had the double max out of competitions. Like, man, how are we ever gonna top this, right? It might, here we are, it's like, oh man, a double 1.3. How are we ever gonna top this? So even stuff that seems like trivial now, right? At the time where it's like, how on earth are we gonna beat this? So yeah, I don't know how it's gonna happen or what is gonna happen, but I don't have a doubt in my mind that so these friggin' kids, right? They're gonna figure it out. Like, all these top level players, they're gonna do something crazy. I don't know what, but they'll do it.
And you'll be part of that history with the Monday Night Mayhem super show with the super shows from Friendlies, the regional in the Detroit area, and everything you do in the community. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining me on the Dependency Podcast this month, Birb.
Yeah, absolutely, Frank. Yeah, I'm glad I could play even a small role in being part of it. It means I've done my job. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.